dear students and aspirants. My name is Arpita, and I will be teaching international relations here at VISHNU IAS. In this short video, I will give you a snapshot regarding your international relations preparation for the civil services exam. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Now, the first question that will come to your mind is, why should I even devote my time for international relations preparation? Is it that important? Let me tell you that nearly 4 questions are coming every year from international relations in the general studies paper 2. And these 4 questions are worth nearly 50 marks. So, I think you are already convinced about the importance of international relations when it comes to your civil services preparation. And this is an introductory video where I'm going to walk you through. This is an introductory video, and I will walk you through some important aspects of international relations preparation. What are the different things that we are going to discuss in this video? First, we will decode the UPSC syllabus for international relations. So what are some of the aspects that we are going to discuss in this video? First of all, we will decode the UPSC syllabus for international relations. Secondly, and most important part, we will also see how the syllabus can be linked with some of the questions that have appeared in the mains examination. And we will also discuss an approach to studying international relations. That is, what are the things that we must do and what all we must avoid when we are preparing for international relations for our examination. Now, before I move ahead with this video, I have a quote here from you from the very famous Chinese general and military strategist who said, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles." UPSC may not be your enemy as such here, but it is definitely an opponent that you wish to conquer. And since it is an examination that you want to conquer, that you want to emerge out of with flying colors, it is important that we begin with looking at the syllabus of this examination. And knowing this examination is our first step towards conquering this examination. And it is here that I am going to help you to know your opponent so that you can go ahead and conquer it successfully. Coming to decoding the UPSC syllabus for international relations. Now, here, see, these days questions from international relations are also coming in your prelims examination and definitely in the mains examination. But the problem is that when we look at the prelim syllabus, we don't get much insight as to how we should go about preparing. Because what does the prelim syllabus say? It is merely mentioning current events of national and international importance. So this can mean so many things that are happening with respect to international importance around you. This does not give you much insight into how you should go about preparing. And it is here that the mains syllabus of UPSC becomes handy for us, because the main syllabus gives us relatively little bit more information as to how we should go about preparing for international relations. What all does it say? The first thing that the main syllabus mentions for you is India and its neighborhood relations. So what is the neighborhood relations that we are talking about? Largely, we are talking about the South Asian neighborhood, and to a certain extent in today's world, also referring to the Southeast Asian neighborhood. Second thing that the syllabus tells you is bilateral, regional, and global groupings. What do we mean by bilateral? Bilateral is India's relation with any other country, say United States, Myanmar, Bangladesh. So this is bilateral relation. What do we mean by regional relation? It can be India's relations with, say, ASEAN, or India's relations with the African Union. These are the regional organizations. And when we say global groupings, we are referring to organizations like, say, the United Nations, or the World Trade Organization, or the World Health Organization. So India's relations in all these three aspects, bilateral relations, regional relations, and global groupings, are included here. And what does it further add on? And also agreements. So what are agreements? Agreements can be something like, say, the Ashgabat Agreement, or an agreement like TRIPS. So these kind of agreements as well are included in your IR syllabus. Further, the syllabus goes on to say that how are we going to study these bilateral relations or these agreements? Most important word that is mentioned here, and or affecting India's interest. This is very important. See, many a times what happens is that when students enter into the UPSC syllabus in UPSC preparation, they become very interested in one or the other aspect of the syllabus. Like some students want to become constitutional experts, some students want to become experts in international relations, and they will decide that, well, I am very interested in the Central Asian region, or I am very interested in the African region, so I'm going to read all that is there with respect to the African region or with respect to Central Asia. But your own interest is not what is of importance here. Well, your own interest you can discover and read about it in your own free time, or once you have become an officer. But when it comes to this examination, what is important for you is India's interest. All these relations you have to study, keeping in mind what are India's national priorities. Coming to the third component, it is saying effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. If you noticed, already twice the syllabus has made a reference to India's interest. Now, the UPSC syllabus has been crafted very carefully. And if this syllabus is mentioning twice about this aspect of India's interest, it is giving us a cue that this must not be ignored. Now, see, why is it referring to India's interest here? Suppose I say that, well, I'm very interested in learning about the Eastern and the Central European countries. And yesterday, Austria has made some very important changes in its immigration policies. But is Austria really of much interest to India? Definitely, it's an important country. And if you're interested, you should learn about it. But it is not of that much significance when it comes to India's strategic and geopolitical interest. But tomorrow, if USA makes some changes in its immigration policies, or if USA goes and makes some changes in its trade policies, then that is going to definitely become important for us, because that is what is affecting our interest. Okay, then another aspect that is mentioned in your syllabus and that we often tend to overlook is Indian diaspora. And very shortly, I will show you why I'm laying particular emphasis on this. So Indian diaspora are these people who trace their roots to India by birth or by descent. They may not necessarily be citizens of India, but you know that Indian diaspora has been important not just in the present times but historically as well. Indian diaspora has also played a very important role in our Indian national movement. So Indian diaspora is also an important component of our overall foreign policy. And you might have heard of this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. What is it related to? It is recognizing the achievements of overseas Indians. And lastly, what the syllabus is telling us is important international institutions, agencies, and fora. But what do we need to know about these important international institutions? There are so many institutions, and we can go about studying for just one institution for an entire year. But here also, UPSC is directing you somewhere. It is telling you that, my dear students and aspirants, what you need to know about these international institutions is their structure. What do we mean by structure? We mean their membership, their headquarter, their important decision making bodies. Now, this is also a very important aspect when it comes to your prelims exam. If you analyze the UPSC previous year question papers and try to find out what kind of questions have been asked from international relations, you would see that most of the questions that have come in the prelims examination from international relations have been associated with these international institutions and organizations. And even within that, there are 2 or 3 areas that UPSC has played around with. One is with respect to membership. What kind of membership India has of these organizations also becomes important. Whether India is a full-time member or whether India is just an observer state, you should know the nature of India's membership in these organizations. And the second important thing is mandate. Mandate meaning, what is the objective of this organization? Has this organization been created to promote international peace and security? Or has this organization been created to promote trade liberalization? See, an organization can have a list of 10 to 12 mandates. We might not be able to remember each of them, but at least a broad understanding of its mandate is important for us. And as I'm emphasizing again, this will help you not only when it comes to your mains, but also for answering questions on international organizations in the preliminary examination. Now, often we hear this term that when you are preparing for UPSC, you have to learn to develop interlinkages with different parts of the syllabus. Now, here I'm going to help you a bit and tell you what kind of interlinkages can be developed between international relations and some other aspects of your syllabus. Two things that I would be pointing out is that your understanding of international relations, or how well you are going to master this subject, is one going to depend upon your knowledge of world history. International relations is integrally connected with overall world history. Those students who have a good grasp over world history are also going to have a good grasp over international relations. Second aspect, and this is part of your paper 1 as mentioned in the syllabus. Another important place where international relation can be linked is with geography. How? You would have read in your geography this aspect, distribution of key natural resources. Natural resources in the world are scarce. And as you know, we have this word called geopolitics. And within geopolitics, countries are competing with each other when it comes to these scarce natural resources. What can it be? It can be things like oil, it can be things like uranium, and control over natural resources, for instance, with respect to India, I often hear words like energy security. How are we going to ensure energy security? That then is going to depend on how we conduct our foreign policy and our international relations. So, this way, you can also not study international relations in silo in a watertight compartment, separate, but link it with these two aspects of your syllabus as well. So, now that we have seen the syllabus, it is time for us to look at some questions, because the syllabus alone is not enough for us to move ahead with our preparation. The first cue we definitely get by looking at the syllabus, but the second cues with respect to how we should go about with our international relations preparation will come from looking at some of the previous year questions. Let's begin with that now. If you see, one of the questions that I've chosen for you here is about China. What is this question saying? That China is using its economic relations and trade surplus. We know that China enjoys a trade surplus with almost all the countries globally, even with USA. That it is using its trade surplus as a tool to develop potential military status in Asia. Now, how are you going to understand this question? If you have been following international relations news, current events, you would be able to link this with, say, China's increasing assertions in the South China Sea. This question appeared in the 2017 examination. So at that time, the Doklam issue was in news. Also, if you are reading it today, you can also link it with the India-China growing border disputes. So all of that is an example of China's growing military power status. In addition to that, if you know about how China, for instance, is, say, providing a lot of military inventory to Bangladesh. You would understand that all of that is an example of China's military power status in Asia. Then, moving ahead, on the basis of this statement that this question is giving us, it is telling us to discuss the impact of it on India as a neighbor. Now, what did we discuss when we were looking at the syllabus? That we have to see the policies of any developed or developing country from the point of view of how it impacts India's interest. So, to tell briefly as to how it might impact India's interest is, one, it is going to impact the balance of power in South Asia. Also, as you know, it will also have an impact on how we are going to approach the Indo-Pacific. So, based on your knowledge of these things, you can take an answer or you can take a shot at a question of this nature. But you can see here that how important the syllabus is for us. The moment you know the syllabus, you can easily understand that this question is very integrally connected with the words that we discussed in our syllabus. India's bilateral relations, India's neighborhood, integrally connected with India's neighborhood. The question is also connected with how the policies of a developed or a developing country has an impact on India. Second question, what is this next question telling us? What are the main functions of the United Nations Economic and Social Council? Explain different functional commissions attached to it. Now, this is a very factual question, and this kind of a question, you either know it or you don't know it. ECOSOC, as you know, is a specialized agency of the UN. Now, when I was showing the syllabus to you, I particularly drew your attention to what the syllabus was mentioning with respect to international institutions. It was asking us that we need to know their structure and their mandate. So, It is just asking you the mandate or the functions of the ECOSOC. And further, now the second part of this question is going to be slightly difficult for those students who have not prepared these international institutions thoroughly. Because what is it saying? What are the different functional commissions? Now, there are 6 to 7 functional commissions, like the Commission on Women, the Commission on Science and Technology. Even if you did not know all the 6 to 7, if you knew just say 4 or 5 of them, and one line you could have written about each of those 4 or 5 commissions, this was a 150 marker question, a 150 word question, 10 marker. You could have easily answered this question. And mind you, it shows us that we have to pay attention to what the syllabus is saying. Because see, this would have been a very scoring and an easy question for those students who had paid attention to that aspect of the syllabus that is telling you to prepare about international institutions and their structure and mandate. Very important. ECOSOC is not an it is not a institutions about which you should not know. It is one of the specialized institutions of the UN, so definitely you should know about an institution like ECOSOC. In today's context, I would say that an institution like WHO is going to be very important. So if you're preparing for your examination this year or for the upcoming year, then definitely when you're preparing international institutions, you have to prepare with respect to an organization like WHO. What are important decision making bodies like the World Health Assembly? So from these previous year questions, you can take some cues as to how you should go about with your preparation. Coming to another question, if you see, Indian diaspora has an important role to play in Southeast Asian countries. Now, I had showed you in the syllabus specifically that Indian diaspora is mentioned. And when you are studying about Indian diaspora, don't just read about Indian diaspora with respect to countries like United States or UK, because that is what we mostly hear about in the news. But Indian diaspora is also very important in, say, the African countries. And as I was telling you that here, your knowledge of history can also be of importance. If you see, Indian diaspora in the Southeast Asian countries, in the regions around the Malay Peninsula, has also been very important from your modern history perspective. If you remember your Indian National Army, so you can write a very good introduction to this kind of a question. If you have a good grasp over subjects like history, it will also show the examiner your ability to create interlinkages in the syllabus. So this question was very specifically asking you about the role of the Indian diaspora in Southeast Asian countries. Similarly, now you can prepare about the role of the Indian diaspora in the African countries, particularly in the East African countries. Coming to another question, this question is specific to Israel, and it is telling that India's relations with Israel have acquired a depth and a diversity. The reason I have picked this question, because you know that the Israel-Palestine issue is very much in news these days. Now, whenever you are studying about the Israel-Palestine issue, as you are reading a lot, I'm sure you're watching a lot of television debates, editorials in the newspapers are coming on with respect to this. You should not just know as to, okay, what is the conflict in Jerusalem about? That you definitely need to understand. But you also need to know what India and Palestine, what India's relations with Israel and Palestine have been like. And to give you an important cue here, we have said that our policy with respect to Israel and Palestine is to be based on dehyphenation. So if you're writing an answer on India's relations with Israel or with respect to Palestine, a word like this is going to be very important in your answer. And India's relations with Israel has been a contentious issue since the time of our independence. But over the last few years, across different party lines in India, we have realized that we need to maintain good, robust ties with Israel. And this includes a lot of things. It can be over defense, because this question is asking you about the diversity of relations. So it can be over defense, it is with respect to agriculture, it is with respect to water management, it is with respect to science and technology. So all this is showing you the diversity of the relations with respect to India and Israel. And now we are saying that we have to recognize our relations with Israel and with Palestine on their own merit without getting involved in the Israel Palestine issue directly. Our relations with Israel have to be on its own merit. That is what this dehyphenation is about. One more question for you. And here, let me read out this question for you and I'll explain why I have chosen this question. It is telling you that a number of outside powers have entrenched themselves in Central Asia. What is the importance of Central Asia? Resources, which is a zone of interest to India as well. Discuss the implications in this context of India's joining the Ashgabat Agreement. Even for India, Central Asia is important with respect to some resources like uranium. And as we saw in the syllabus, it is specifically mentioned that we need to be aware of some important agreements. So this question is specifically asking you about the Ashgabat Agreement. Now, if you're writing an answer on Central Asia, and as I said, if you have a good grasp over world history, you could have also written in this answer about the great game of the major powers of the world now fighting for influence in Central Asia. You could have also made a mention in this answer of the North South corridor. So, these kind of linkages with respect to history, geopolitics, geography, natural resources is very important for your international relations. So, now that we have seen some of the aspects of the syllabus as well as the kind of questions that are being asked, one question that will come to our mind is, what are the things that we must keep in mind when we are reading about international relations? First is read. Your understanding of international relations should not be based on some superficial things like Twitter updates or WhatsApp updates. No, you are studying for an examination. You should have the approach of a person who is capable of being in administration. And for that, you should read. Read what? You can begin with some, basic NCRT textbooks as well, like the contemporary world politics. You have to read some good editorials from newspapers like Indian Express, Hindu, The Wire. Your knowledge with respect to international relations should come from these credible sources and not from WhatsApp or Twitter. Second, after reading, you have to reflect. Why is it important for us to reflect? It is important for us to reflect and think because only when we think after reading are we able to organize our thoughts. And when we organize our thoughts, we can simplify our preparation. So after you have read something, think about it. Where does what I have read, how is it fitting into my syllabus? How can I create any interlinkage between what I have read with respect to international relation with some other aspect of my syllabus? This will help you simplify your preparation and also organize your notes. And last but not the least, write. See, at the end of the day, no matter how much our knowledge is, what we have to inculcate for this examination is a good way to articulate our thoughts. And how are you going to articulate your thoughts? You are expected to articulate your thoughts in 150 to maximum of 250 words in this examination. So the third most important aspect is writing. And I'm not saying that you begin with answer writing from the day one itself. No, at least after you have read something, if you have read the contemporary world politics, NCRT, or you have read a good editorial on something related to international affairs, maybe in 3-4 points, try and summarize what you have read. Because this in this exam your success depends on an incremental progress. Okay, so once you begin with maybe jotting down these 3-4 points that you have read, gradually you will also develop the ability to write excellent answers in these 150 to 250 words. Next, my dear students, it is very important that you know what your goal is. See, when it comes to something like international relations, if tomorrow there is a small incursion between India and China along the LAC, you can spend your whole day watching some kind of a news report or some kind of 24/7 news coverage of it. But that is not your goal. Your goal is not to watch some hawkish news reporters. You are not preparing to become a military strategist. Well, you can become one in the future, but right now, you are not expected to be a military strategist or a diplomat. You are more of a generalist. Unless, of course, you are taking a PSIR optional, then the approach might be different. But when you are studying, please do not spend your time watching some kind of frivolous debate on TV. This is not your goal. Rather, this is your goal. And for this, you have to, as I mentioned, refer to good NCRTs, the important NCRTs, good and nice editorials for building up on your knowledge. Let's now take a look at what should be our approach when we are studying international relations. Now, you have to become a district collector and definitely not a book collector. You don't have to create a library in your house of international relations book. You have to keep your preparation simplified. Refer to only a few limited sources. As I told you, some good NCRTs on world politics, the world history NCRT. Also, you can refer to websites like the Ministry of External Affairs. The Ministry of External Affairs website has these small briefings on India's relations with different countries, with different regional organizations. That is something that you can refer to instead of accumulating a lot of books on international relations. Keep a simplified and organized approach when it comes to studying the subject. Second, most importantly, you have to develop an IR specific vocabulary. What do I mean by this? See, when you are preparing for this examination, each of the papers of this examination requires you to have a specific kind of vocabulary. For instance, if you are studying ethics, you need to use words like attitude, values, emotional intelligence in your answer. Similarly, a kind of vocabulary is needed for international relations. What do I mean by this? Suppose you are writing an answer on the influence of China in India's neighborhood. You need to use some words like diplomacy or words like balance of power if you are writing an answer on, say, the Indo-Pacific. Words like maritime domain awareness. Or as I showed you with respect to Central Asia, for instance, say words like great game. See, if your answer on international relations has this kind of a terminology, Imagine what kind of an edge it is going to give you over your peers who are writing a more generic answer. Another thing that a vocabulary helps you with, a subject specific vocabulary helps you, is that at the end of the day, you are expected to write 150 to 250 words. That's not a lot. So, if you are able to develop this kind of vocabulary, you will be able to express yourself in fewer words. And it will also give you an edge over those who are appearing for the examination but not using this kind of words. And I will help you during this course to develop a vocabulary that is specific to international relations. And whenever you are studying any topic, develop this what, how, and why approach. For instance, if you are studying about what is happening in Israel Palestine presently, what is it about? What is it about Jerusalem? That makes it such a contentious issue between Israel and Palestine. How has it become a contentious issue? What has been the context? What has been the background behind it? And when you are covering the why aspect with respect to any issue as to why you are studying it, please remember the two words that I was repeatedly drawing your attention to: India's interest. Okay, so this what, how, and why approach will help you not only when you are studying something, but also when you are writing your answers. See, I know that in the exam you have different directive words like discuss, examine, analyze, and students often get hung up on the specific meaning of these words. But if you take this what, how, and why approach, you can easily tackle any question in the examination as well. Now, as a part of an educator here at VISHNU IAS, my goal here while teaching you international relations is to empower you in your preparations. I am going to mentor you and handhold you in your international relations preparation. I will point out to you what chapters you can read from a particular NCRT before the class or after the class, what kind of editorials or newspaper articles you can read for a specific portion of the syllabus. Because as you know, in today's world, we are not facing a dearth of study material. Rather, the problem that we have is the problem of plenty. And as your mentor and teacher for this subject, my role will be to point you to the appropriate sources for your syllabus. And we will develop a foundation for the subject. Whenever we are studying, say, any issue, any bilateral relation, we will not just begin with what is happening currently. We will develop a foundational understanding so that we can understand the present based on our analysis and understanding of the past. Then we will definitely integrate current affairs. As you know, international relations is a very dynamic topic. The questions that are coming in your examination are inspired from what is happening in the current scenario. So definitely current affairs will be integrated in our preparation. And last but not the least, we need to learn to articulate what we are studying and what we are learning. So answer writing will also be a critical component of our preparation here. So, with that, we are going to end this discussion. I hope it was valuable for you. And please join me in this journey of GS Foundation here at VISHNU IAS. Thank you.